Welcome to another interview with the Yale Journal of International Affairs. Today we have the distinct pleasure to sit down with David Rothkopf, CEO and editor of Foreign Policy magazine. David, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
You have literally written the book on the National Security Council, its people, its processes, and you have been outspoken in your critique of some of the Obama administration's processes with regard to national security, staffing, decision-making. If you were to advise the next president of the United States in 2016 on how to structure their staff, some rules of the road, what would you recommend?
You need a leader who has experience running things. You need a leader that's got an experience in international affairs. You need a leader that's got a worldview, a strategy. That aligns with the needs of the U.S. at a time. You need a leader who's going to hire a team around her or him that is diverse in its views, that brings management strength to the parts of the government they're supposed to run, and that leader will then empower to do that. Because I think one of the problems with the Obama administration is a very small circle around the president has had disproportionate power, and those in the agencies that are essential in the execution of U.S. national security policy haven't really been as engaged as they should be. The White House staff in the Obama administration has been bloated. The NSC is twice as big as it ever was in history. And this creates a problem. By being twice as big on the inside, within the NSC, they create the false sense that they have the capability to do the things other agencies once did, which they don't. But because they are attempting to do those things, they're incapable of doing the things they're supposed to be doing. The NSC is supposed to be providing policy choices to the president and making sure those policy choices are implemented properly, not actually implementing themselves, but coordinating them. So I think I would advise the next president that perhaps instead of an NSC of roughly 400 people, they might think of a NSC of roughly 200 people, maybe even smaller than that, because I think the message needs to be the NSC is there to advise the president and help shape policies, but the State Department, the Defense Department, the intelligence agencies, the economic agencies are the ones that have actually got to go and do the work. I think those are a few of the things that are necessary. Obviously, on a region by region, policy by policy basis, there are other steps that could be taken.
You were a senior official in the Clinton administration, and now you run a major foreign policy publication. What impact, in your estimation, has the evolution of the media landscape had on U.S. national security?
Well, I think, you know, the fact that today a leader is constantly being scrutinized and instantly being reacted to by a myriad of media is a huge difference. Today, if the president gets up and gives a speech, there's an instant Twitter reaction in real time to everything he says. And there is instant polling on everything that the president says. So crises arise and are addressed in real time, and that means there isn't any deliberation. And, you know, there's Sandy Berger, a former national security advisor, has this expression that in Washington, the urgent always overtakes the important. And, I think that's a big problem of the media cycle. There's also this kind of sense that you play to the media, that you use the media. This administration has had the most bizarre inclination to tweet about everything, you know, and any time somebody does something, there's a tweet. If Vladimir Putin invades a country, the White House is extremely disappointed with Vladimir Putin, and you got to ask yourself, like, whose mother do we think we are? You know, Vladimir Putin, how does he react to a tweet from the White House saying they're disappointed? You know, foreign policy is not a talk show. It doesn't require a constant response. Dead air is okay. If you don't have something to say that actually advances the national interest, don't say it. And there's a stark contrast to the way that the United States, trapped on the sort of hamster wheel of the news cycle, addresses foreign policy compared to the way, say, China, which has policy horizons that are measured in decades and centuries, approaches it, and I think that works to the benefit of China.
In your book, you speak about a growing distance between Washington and Silicon Valley, despite the fact that many of the seed technologies embedded in tech products came from government investment decades ago. Can you expand here on the ways in which government and tech may work together in a productive fashion?
Well, look, I mean, right now we're at a watershed moment in the history of the world, and I think, we talk about the information revolution, but what has happened in the past 20 years is prelude. We haven't seen anything yet. Within the next few years, we'll get to a point where, for the first time in human history, every single human being is connected in a man-made system. That changes what identity is, what a community is. The information revolution is going to change what money is, what an economy is, what a war is, what peace is, what governance is, how healthcare services are delivered, how government services are delivered, the speed of things, the character of things. By 2020, there'll be 50 billion devices on the internet. That's 50 billion microprocessors, each churning out information for the big data era, but all of them a weak point, a vulnerability, a point of attack. The best minds on these things do not work in the government. The best minds on these things work in tech companies, they work in financial services companies. There's 700 people at JP Morgan that work in cyber defense. I think the average that they get paid is $300,000 a year. Cabinet secretaries don't make $300,000 a year. You're not going to attract those people into the U.S. government. So unless there's a public-private partnership, we're not going to understand the threats. We're not going to be able to deal with the threats. Private sector is actually the place that is targeted. In China, government leaders are engineers. In the United States, government leaders are lawyers. So in China, they understand some of these things a little better than we do. I'm not saying that they're special, but I am saying that we are deficient in the kind of skills to the point that they don't even know the vocabulary.
What is the international issue that keeps you up at night?
That I think we're on the verge of global change on a scale that might exceed that of the Renaissance in terms of the redefinition of society by technological innovations, the reweaving of the fabric of the planet, and that we don't have even the fundamental philosophical guidelines that we need to understand how that society is to work. Does a person have a right to the internet? Do they have a right to the internet? Do they have a right to electricity? Who owns the data that everybody is producing? Who has the right to create life using genetic engineering techniques? If somebody attacks somebody via cyber, does somebody have the right to respond to that kinetically? What's the future of a nation state? What's the future of money? What happens in societies when technological innovation means that jobs aren't being created, the middle class is being gutted? Are we prepared to move to a 4-day or 3-day work week? Are we prepared to have people work into their 70s or their 80s because we can't afford their retirements? A lot of the things that we just sort of slough off, push off, say the future will resolve, we actually have to address really soon, and we're not having that conversation.
Well, thank you again to David Rothkopf for sitting down with the Yale Journal of International Affairs. It's been a pleasure, David.
Thank you very much.